Okay, this is the second lecture for Intro to Teaching, ED 280, and I am still in Chapter 4. I hope to finish up in this video. This is Chapter 4, page 124. And we're going to start with what are the 5 modern philosophical orientations to teaching. Again, this is page 124. And they just simply name them for you. And then in the next pages, they will describe them for you. So this is something that once you complete the survey that I ran off for you in class, you will have hopefully one high score or the highest score. And it should be one of these 5. Okay, so from now on you can say, I'm a perennialist. That's perennialism. I am an essentialist for essentialism. I am a progressivist for progressivism. And I'm an existentialist for existentialism. And then finally, I am a social reconstructionist or for social reconstruction. So those are the 5 modern philosophical orientations to teaching, or 5 educational philosophies. The first one is perennialism. And I'm just going to read from page 125, and if you have a highlighter, I want you to highlight that first paragraph. Well, actually it's the only paragraph there under perennialism, and then on page 126 I want you to highlight the first sentence in the first paragraph that you see. As the term implies, perennialism views truth as constant or perennial. The aim of education, according to perennialist thinking, is to ensure that students acquire knowledge of these unchanging principles or great ideas. The function of school is to educate the intellect. Perennialists also believe that natural world and human nature have remained basically unchanged over the centuries. Thus, great ideas continue to have the most potential for solving problems of any era. Furthermore, the perennialist philosophy emphasizes the rational thinking abilities of human beings. It is it's the cultivation of the intellect that makes human beings truly human and differentiates from other animals. And then again, I'm turning to page 126, picking up in that the next paragraph, but the first sentence. The curriculum, according to perennialists, should stress students' intellectual growth in arts and sciences. Okay, so for instance, if you value the works, what we call the great works, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, Mice and Men by John Steinbeck, Romeo and Juliet, or any type of Shakespeare play, Moby Dick, all of these are considered the great works. They have these basic themes through them, and we still learn from them today. Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, those will be examples of the great works also. And this is very essential to what perennialists believe. Okay, some other names would be Beowulf, which is one of the oldest stories known, Chaucer by Chaucer, Dickens, A Christmas Carol, A Christmas Carol. Those would be considered great works, all of those. The next philosophy on page 127, and I'm down at the bottom, is essentialism. Essentialism, and I'm gonna, if you would, highlight the first sentence in the first paragraph. Essentialism, which has some similarities to perennialism, is a conservative philosophy of education originally formulated as a criticism of progressive trends in schools by William C. Bagley. Okay, and he was a professor at the Education at Teachers College at Columbia University. If you would go on to the second paragraph and highlight that entire paragraph. Essentialism holds that our culture has a core of common knowledge that schools are obligated to transmit to students in a systematic, disciplined way. Unlike perennialists who emphasize a set of external truths, essentialists stress what they believe to be essential knowledge and skills, often deemed the basics, that productive members of the society should know. Okay, so your reading, your writing, your math, or language arts and things of that nature. These would be subjects that essentialists would zero in on. Basic things that a person would need to know to survive in society. What those subjects bring out for real life purposes. And now I'm in the next paragraph, or the last paragraph on page 127, and I've highlighted the first sentence. According to essentialist philosophy, schooling should be practical and provide children with sound instruction that prepares them for life, which is what I said earlier. Schools should not try to influence or set social policies. There's no, when you're trying to learn how to balance a checkbook, that's not a philosophy, that's a skill. And that's what essentialism is about. It's the essentials, or the basics. Okay? So that is essentialism. And after each one, I want you to go back and I want to encourage you to go back and read behind what I'm doing, because after each section they give you a lengthy example of a teacher that follows that philosophy. For instance, under perennialism, there is a portrait of a perennialist teacher, and then after essentialism, there is a portrait of an essentialist teacher. So go back and read those to get, if you still are confused. The next educational philosophy, and this is the one that when I took the same survey that you took, this was my highest score. This was progressivism. Progressivism, if you look on page 128, if you would highlight the first paragraph, and then under the paragraph there's a 1, 2, 3, and highlight those. Progressivism is based on the belief that education should be child-centered rather than focus on teacher or content area. I don't know necessarily if I really agree with that wholeheartedly, because I do think that it definitely needs to be focused on teacher, because one of the most important aspects of student achievement is having an adequate teacher. Okay. But anyway, the writing of John Dewey, remember that's that name again, that he is really a champion of progressivism. The writing of John Dewey in the 1920s and 30s contributed to a great deal of the spread of progressive ideas. Okay. Number 1, the content of the curriculum ought to be derived from students' interests rather than from the academic disciplines. 2, effective teaching takes into account the whole child and his or her interests and needs in relation to cognitive, affective, and psychomotor areas. So, take an example what I'm trying to do with you. I'm trying to incorporate, most of you have a love or a necessity for technology. Smartphones, internet, laptops, tablets, iPads, what have you. So I'm trying to feed into that. From breaking from the norm of having to stand up in front of you and discuss all of this, or to read this to you, or to ask you, come on, read this and we'll go back over it in class, but to actually read through it on your own. So I'm trying to encourage you to take that step, and also for me to just kind of tell you what I want you to know, but for you to be able to listen to it and to think about it and to bring back, to contribute to the class, and to bring back and say, okay, well, I may not agree with that, or I didn't quite get that. Can you explain it? Or we could have student discussions where the students are answering those questions that you would normally ask me. But we got to get to that. So I got to get you to buy into these videos here. So when I assign through email, hey, click on this link, or I need you to read it, listen to this video. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help. And again, this leads back to the educational philosophy of progressivism. Learning is essentially active rather than passive. I'm trying to make your learning process active. So you get involved. So by watching these videos, you are getting involved. You're getting the meat of it, and then we're going to go and we're going to add the layers on top. okay, when we get into class. Progressive strategies. Now I'm in the next paragraph, and I highlighted the first 3 sentences. The progressive philosophy also contends that knowledge that is true in the present may not be true in the future. Hence, the best way to prepare students for an unknown future is to equip them with problem-solving strategies that will enable them to discover meaningful knowledge at various stages of their lives. Teachers with progressive orientation give students considerable freedom to determine their school experiences. Okay. Now I'm on the next page, 129, and what did I do? Let's see. I highlighted the last sentence on page 128, and then I continued on page 129, and it says, progressive teachers begin with their students, where their students are, though the daily give and take of the classroom leads students to see the subject to be learned that can enhance their lives. And that's what I'm trying to do with these videos. And that's pretty much it. And then you can read on your own the portrait of a progressive teacher. Turning over to the next page, we have page 130, existentialism. And in the past, a lot of my students have gotten existentialism and essentialism confused, probably because they were kind of spelled, they have some of the same letters. So make sure that you, when you look at your test items, don't get existentialism and essentialism confused. Okay, I highlighted the first paragraph on page 130. Existential philosophy is unique because it focuses on experiences of the individual. Our philosophies are Our philosophies are concerned with developing systems of thought for identifying and understanding what is common to all reality, human existence, and values. Existentialism, on the other hand, offers the individual way of thinking about my life, and they put emphasis on my life, what has meaning for me, what is true for me. The purpose of life for existentialists is to define one's self. In general, existentialism emphasizes creative choice, the subjectivity of human experiences, and the concrete acts of human existence over a rational scheme of human nature or reality. And this is where one of those famous philosophers introduced at the beginning of the chapter, Jean-Paul Sartre, was a French philosopher, and he was a famous existentialist. It goes on deeper to say that life, according to the existential thought, has no meaning, and the universe is different to the situation that humankind finds itself in. For me, this is a little too deep. So the first paragraph, that's all I'm going to go over. But there is a very concise definition at the end of the chapter, which I will refer to. And again, there is a portrait of an existentialist teacher. And again, read over this so you'll know if this is you, how you could put this into practice. The last educational philosophy is social reconstructionism. And what I have highlighted, I went to the first paragraph and I highlighted the first sentence and the last sentence. So as the term applies, and I'm on page 132, social reconstructionism holds that schools should take the lead in changing or reconstructing the current social order. In short, schools should not only transmit knowledge, that means disseminating or teach, telling you what you need to know, transmits knowledge about existing social order. They should also seek to reconstruct it. So, in other words, none of you were probably alive in the 60s, and neither was I, but I have studied it. So I know that was for the United States, that was a very innovative time. It was a very trying time. There were wars that went on that were very costly in American lives and costly monetary-wise. And it was just a lot of social reform going on. You had women's liberation. You had voting rights, and you had social reform for the poor. So there's a lot of things going on. You had an assassination of a president. You had assassination of civil rights leaders. You had assassination of uh, presidential candidates. So I'm referring to JFK, RFK, Dr. King, Malcolm X, Medgar Evers. I'm referring to all of them. So it was a very trying period. And a lot of people did things. They did sit-ins, they marched, they did various different things. So what I'm saying is that that's all examples of social reconstructionism, where you take what you learn and then you apply it. I can't think of the movie that I want to reference, but there was a movie where these students, these young black students, were in the 60s and they walked out of their school. There was something that happened to one student and all of them decided to walk out, and then they got their training on how to march, how to do sit-ins, and I cannot think of the name of that particular one. But anyway, it may come to me. Social Reconstructive and Progressivism, I highlighted the first paragraph under that. Social Reconstructionism has clear ties to progressive educational philosophy. Both provide opportunities for extensive interaction between teachers and students and among the students themselves. Furthermore, both place a premium on bringing the community, if not the entire world, into the classroom. Student experiences often include field trips, community-based projects, various sorts, opportunities to interact with persons beyond the four walls of the classroom. Okay, again, someone who may be studying the environment and the effects of pollution may decide that, okay, well, my school doesn't recycle anything, so now I'm going to start a recycling drive. That would be an influence of social reconstructionism. Okay. Turning over to page 134, what are the psychological orientations that have influenced the teaching philosophies? There are three. There is humanistic psychology, behaviorism, and constructivism. So these are the three psychological orientations that influence those five previous educational philosophies. That's the way you need to think about it. The first one is humanistic psychology, which is on page 135, and just highlight the first two paragraphs that you see there. Humanistic psychology emphasizes personal freedom, choice, awareness, and personal responsibility. As the term implies, it also focuses on achievements, motivation, feelings, actions, needs of human beings. The goal of education, according to this orientation, is self-actualization. And then it goes on the top, that is derived from the philosophy of humanism, which is developed during the European Renaissance and Protestant Reformation, and is based on the belief that individuals control their own destinies through the application of their intelligence and learning. People make themselves. Well, the exact opposite of that would be behaviorism. Behaviorism, one of the principal originators is John B. Watson and B.F. Skinner, who you will see their name all through psychology. Behaviorist, and I don't have anything highlighted there, so I'm going to skip to the back and read to you what they have in the back. Behaviorism is by careful control of educational environment and with appropriate reinforcement techniques, teachers can cause students to exhibit desired behaviors. So behaviorism is a good way to look at that. It's classroom management. You are trying to get your students to behave a certain way. Or it's not all about, trying to get them to sit down and be quiet, or to, not pass notes or not to do something, but you have certain procedures in how you run your classroom. Some of you when you get to student teaching, you'll hear about Harry Wong. He did a whole series of the first days of teaching and what you should do as far as